Trigger warning. This speech may contain material offensive to some listeners. Trigger warnings often precede videos, speeches, other forms of media, and they serve to make the consumers aware of material that is potentially offensive to them. And recently it's been implemented in the public education system as well. It began with good intentions to help people with PTSD avoid things that might trigger their disorder, but it soon spiraled out of control, coming to include every possible situation that might offend a person. They become all too common in schools across the country, and though they are not inherently bad, they're a symptom of a far bigger issue, which is the restriction of free speech. Free speech is a great trophy of our nation's freedom, and it shouldn't be taken for granted, but we should cherish and protect it. Speech restriction has invaded higher education, and threatens to render the original intent of the education void. But there are ways we can fight against this paralysis of thought, as individuals in our own small ways. This quote from Michael Bloomberg, three-time governor of New York City, under whose direct influence the school system saw major gains in both enrollment and graduation. The purpose of education isn't to reaffirm students' beliefs, it's to challenge, expand, and refine them, and to send students into the world with minds open and questioning, not closed and self-righteous. This helps young people prepare for citizenship in a diverse, democratic society. America is not always a comfy place to live in, and college shouldn't be either. So, college in a lot of places has started to become not a place of learning, but more a place of indoctrination. The other side of this argument is as follows. Norton Shapiro is president of Northwestern University and has been on the faculty of college campuses since 1980, so I think he's qualified to talk about student life. He says, students don't fully embrace uncomfortable learning situations until they themselves are comfortable. He says safe spaces give them that comfort. Now, the big problem with safe spaces is that they can imply that the outside is safe, which brings us to something called mean world syndrome, which is the belief that the outside world is a dangerous place full of people who can't be trusted. This attitude can be very divisive. It's not conducive to learning, and it's important that we understand that while we do have a right to free speech, we do not have a right to intellectual comfort. Now that I've identified the nature of this problem, I can delve into some of the specifics. There are two forms through which this stifling of free speech takes place on college campuses. First of which is speech codes. Now, for these purposes, I'm going to define speech codes as anything that goes beyond what the First Amendment protects. So, the First Amendment would not protect things such as fighting words or harassment, so we won't include speech codes that get rid of those. And a lot of what these speech codes do is that they prevent speech that is offensive to individuals and therefore is subjective. FIRE, or the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, is a free speech watchdog, and they are dedicated to documenting and countering infringements of free speech in schools. And they recently did a survey of 449 schools, and over 40% of them had speech codes that went beyond what is acceptable with the First Amendment. The other issue is disinvitation. Disinvitation is when a speaker that has been invited to a college is, disinvited. They're not allowed to come and speak anymore. And FIRE, the same organization, documented a case where Dr. Jordan Peterson, who is a renowned professor of psychology, they restricted him from speaking at Linfield College after tweeting that no safe spaces would be safe. The problem with disinvitation is that it keeps alternative views out and stunts intellectual growth. So there's definitely a problem going on here, but how can we fight it? Back to the fire survey, it was actually a 10% decrease in the number of speech codes on college campuses between 2016 and 2017. So I think that really shows that fighting against this kind of thing really does work. Individuals can make an impact too. The influence of a single person is more than we often realize. One person influences many people in their life, and each of those people they influence, in turn, influence more. So a well-defended argument can go a long way. They can also support organizations like FIRE, who protect students' rights, and they can educate those around them on the importance of free speech. So you can see how positive action can help to neutralize this problem. But what if this culture of speech suppression fully asserted itself, stifling any opposition? Well, the result, quite frankly, could be scary. The idea that repression of free speech based on an individual's preferences, just simply whether they disagree, could eventually worm its way into society and affect it as a whole. Students will inevitably replace the generation before them, and the ideas that they learn in college will translate, most likely. Bruce Ashford is a professor at Southeast Baptist Theological Seminary, and is co-author of several books. And he says, "For Americans who are Christians, there is yet another reason to promote free speech. We want to be free to preach the Christian gospel, and even though many people find the Christian gospel offensive or discriminatory, it's imperative that we maintain our ability to spread the gospel that not everyone wants to hear. Suppression could spell dark days for Christianity in America." So, in conclusion, free speech is a precious thing and a great achievement of mankind, not something to be taken for granted or cast aside in ignorance or self-interest. It's something that could be in real jeopardy if left to its current path. So I encourage all of you to take a stand for free speech, both in schools and in society at large. Educate those around you about its importance to our way of life. Support through donations organizations like FIRE who protect students' rights, and vote when you can for candidates who understand the importance of this great freedom of ours. We cannot let this crippling ideology go on unchallenged. So I urge you, challenge it.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. All right. What kind of questions do we have for Jonathan? Whenever you're ready, if you have some, go ahead and raise your hand.
What are some examples of like speech codes?
Speech codes? So that would be restricting someone from maybe giving their opinion on homosexuality. Usually that kind of thing gets shut down if it's anti that. And it depends on political persuasion too. It can come from both ways.
What does conducive mean?
Conducive? Conducive would be proper for. So, like I said, keeping alternative views out is not helpful in the learning process.
Any other questions? All right, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much, Jonathan. And if I could have your next